right? So, hello everyone, and we're going to go over once again our discussion earlier with regards to verbal problems. And as I've mentioned, this part of the lesson is where we apply our skills that we've learned in um, solving our equations and inequalities and applying the principles that we've discussed. Now, here in verbal problems, we are going to categorize the problems that we're going to solve. And before we go to the first type or category of the word problem, we first go over the strategy that we're going to use. And earlier in class, I've mentioned and I've actually given you this strategy, which is on read, represent, relate, equate, solve, and prove. We call this the 3R ESP. So we read the problem thoroughly. So once again, let me put a highlight on the word thoroughly. Represent the unknown by means of a variable. So how do you represent? You have to find or represent it through a certain variable. And the next one after we represent is to relate. Relate what? The unknown and the known values. So you have there the unknown and the values given. So unknown and known values should be related. And how do we relate them? Usually we use equations. Also, we use symbols like operations, so the plus, the minus, etc. Also, after we relate, the thought process would come after that would be the equation, which is very, very important because once we related it correctly, the equation should follow. The correct equation should follow. And you're going to find or come up with an equation using the facts in the problem, and then this is where all the practice that we're doing in solving equations and inequalities, because the latter part we have to solve, which, if I may add, we have to solve accurately and correctly. Once we have the answers, we need to prove or check if our answer is or are sensible. Now, let's proceed to the first type of word problems, and this problem was given and discussed earlier in the lesson, and I'm going to go over it again. And this time I hope for the second time around you'd be able to get the grayish area of this problem. So let me first go over this using the 3R's ESP method. So we read one number is 2 more than thrice another. Their sum is 30. Find the numbers. So upon reading, you're already kind of digesting, or you're already trying to comprehend what this problem is telling you. Now I know that I need to find numbers. Now a question would come to mind: how many numbers do you need to solve? So in this case, the first statement would actually tell me I have one number here and another, so I need 2 numbers. All right, now that would prompt me into the second R, which is to represent. So how many numbers do I need to represent? Now earlier, I hope you may have gotten the idea that when we represent our unknowns, we actually take it from the statements in the problem, except for this part, because it doesn't tell us anything. It just asks us to find the numbers. But here you can see the first statement is actually a clue to represent the problem, to represent the unknown. The second statement as well could be used to represent the unknown. And if you were listening to a discussion, you can actually either use the first sentence or the second sentence to represent the unknown. And actually, the simpler the sentence is, it's easier to represent. But either way, you will go through the next sentence anyhow. So in class earlier, we used the second sentence. This is the one I'm labeling in red. And I'm going to use that in order to represent our given or our unknowns. Okay, remember, if there are no unknowns in the problem, there's no need to solve. If there are unknowns, that's a signal that you have to solve. So I have two numbers, and I'm going to take it from the sentence that says their sum is 30, meaning to say the first number is an addend. So x would be my first number. I have a second number, but I have to relate the second number to the first number. So I've given a concrete example earlier that if I'm adding two numbers with a sum of 30 and I say the first number to be x, to get the second number, I should subtract that addend, the given addend, to 30 to get the second representation. So your second number here is 30 minus x. That's the second number. You can pause the video or replay this again to hear my explanation if you didn't get it right. Okay? So this part here, right here, is very, very important, because if you misrepresent your variables or your unknowns in the problem, you'd be looking for a wrong answer, most probably. Okay, so representation part is done. So we are 3R ASP. That means we are done with reading. We are done with representing. We are now going to the third R, which is to relate. Now, there are two sentences in the problem. The first or the second sentence we use to represent. The other sentence, we will actually use that to relate. All right? So, either way, if the first sentence was used to represent earlier our unknowns, this sentence here would be the one to relate. But since we use the second statement to represent, we are going to use now the first sentence or the first statement to relate. And how are they related? You have to read again the statement. One number is 2 more than thrice another. So which means that you have to decide. From the looks of it, if we're going to comprehend deeper the first sentence, it seems like there's a bigger number and there is a smaller number. Because it says here, if you were going to compare the two numbers, one number, this one, is 2 more than thrice another. And we've agreed that the first one here, let's label it A and let's label this B. The first one is actually bigger. This one, A. So it's up to you. You can label this one as A in your representation and this one is B, just to make it in line or in tune with the statement that we are trying to relate. So we are now going to relate, but while we're relating, we are right away proceeding to the equation. All right? So it says here one number, and since you know or you peg this as the A, you write X. That would now represent one number. Okay? Because here you said that A would refer to X. All right? Now, the second one, you have is. This one is. And we've learned that that represents an equal sign. Right? 2 more than thrice a number. So 2 more than means an operation, which is addition. Thrice another. So that would be multiplication. So 3 of another. And we're referring to that other number, which is B. And in this case, B is your 30 minus X. This is now our working equation. So from here, we're going to work out our answer. So the equation, after that, we have to solve. So here, we have first to get rid of the parentheses. So this would be X equals 2 plus distributive, that would be 90 minus 3X. Next, after we're done with the parentheses, we have to isolate the variables, which means that negative 3x should transpose to the left side, which means that x plus 3x equal to 92. Okay, where did I get that? That's going to be 2 plus 90. Now, here on the left, you have 4x, all right, equals 92. Then we divide using the property of multiplication or division of equality. So this would be x equals, so 9 divided by 4 is 2, but there's a remainder 1 here. That would be 23. Now, once you have a certain value for a variable or for an unknown, you always have to go back to your representation. What is this telling me? X is 23, so I have to go back here, which means A, that is representing X, is equal to 23, which means that I have to find the other number, and the other number is represented by 30 minus X. Now, I know that X is equal to 23, so therefore, this would just be equal to 30 minus 23. And the other number is actually equal to 7. So this is equal to 7. So we're done solving. But we have to prove if our answers are correct. Okay? So, it says here, it should satisfy actually the two statements. It says here, one number is 2 more than thrice another. So it means the bigger number is 2 more than thrice of the smaller. So if I multiplied 7 by 3, that's 21, plus 2 is 23. That's correct. And the second statement, very obvious. Their sum is equal to 30. And indeed, 23 plus 7 is equal to 30. It satisfied both statements. Therefore, our answer is correct. Now, let's move on to this problem. The smaller of two numbers is thrice the larger. Okay? The larger number is 8 more than the smaller number. So again, you have two statements here, and you have to find two numbers. Very clear. So, it's up to you now on the representation part, whether you use the first statement or the second statement. You can pause this video. Pause it. I'm telling you, you pause the video and then you solve. And after you're done solving, then get right on, play it again, or continue playing so that you can see the answer. All right. So, let's represent. Now, on my part, I would, for example, use the first statement for my representation. The smaller of the two numbers is thrice the larger. So there are two numbers. The smaller of the two numbers is thrice the larger. So let's say x is okay. Let me go back again to the problem. The smaller of two numbers is thrice the larger. Okay, I think this is the wrong problem. This is the problem that we need to take. Okay, sum of two numbers, because this is the example number 2 earlier. Sum of two numbers is 29 and their difference is 5. Find the numbers. So, again, I'm telling you, you pause the video and then play it again or continue playing so that you can see the answer. So, earlier, we use the first statement. Now, I'm going to use the second statement or the second part here, which is the difference is 5. I have two numbers, their difference is 5. How do I represent them? So first number is x. That would be the first number. It now depends if that first number is a minuend or a subtrahend. Because if this first number is the bigger number, which means it would be the minuend, the second number here would be x minus 5. That's the second number. Because in subtraction, the bigger number would always be your minuend. But how do you know that? Since the answer is positive, it clearly says that the bigger number is the minuend. Alright? So this is the smaller number. But this, if x was represented as subtrahend, it would mean a different thing. So that would actually, I'm going to just say it. I'm not going to write anymore. If x is the smaller number or the subtrahend, it's going to be 5 plus x for the minuend. All right, think it over. You can solve it like that. We will still arrive with the same answer. Now, this is the representation. I'm going to do now the relation and the equation. Sum of two numbers, I'm going to pick it up here. The sum of two numbers is 29. So I have the first number is x. The second number is x minus 5. I'm just going to add them. And the answer is 29. So, the equation is very doable. All you have to do is first get rid of your parentheses, then add all your variables, transpose negative 5 to the other side. That would be a plus 5 here, so that would be 34. All right, and then divide by 2, so that means x is equal to 17. And after this, what's next? We have to go back to the represented part. So 17 here is representing the bigger number. So that would mean the smaller number would be x minus 5. And I know x is 17 minus 5. That would mean the smaller number, this one, is equal to 12. All right. Now, let's try to check. I left this as your assignment. Now, check if your assignment is correct. Let's go over the statements again. Sum of two numbers is 29. 17 plus 12 is 29. That's correct. Their difference is 5. 17 minus 12 is 5. All right, so there you go. I'm not going to discuss the third problem anymore because I think there's something wrong in the problem. So I'm going to look up the source of this one, and I'm going to try and correct it for tomorrow's example. So once again, you can replay again the video and try to see if you can clarify all these things that you found to be a little bit difficult earlier, and hopefully I have given you a clarity portion, a clear path towards this problem solving, verbal word problems, and so that we can have a good score in our summative test on Friday. For more questions, you can write me up in Schoology. You can send me your message, or please ask questions during class tomorrow. So thank you and goodbye.